Recommendation.
You ready? Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Thursday, May 18th meeting of the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization Policy Board. Thank you for joining us, and we will start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance led by our Vice Chair, Canova Peterson.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Again, welcome. We have a full agenda. We'll try to keep on pace, but we always like to give everybody an opportunity to fully engage, and so we do have some things we'll be discussing, I'm sure, but I will try to keep us moving along. So Ms. Firestone, if you will take the roll call, and I think we have one person that's remotely participating that we need to address through the policy, correct? Okay, go ahead, please.
Town of Ashland, Mr. Hodges.
Here.
Ms. Barnhart. Charles City County, Mr. Atkins.
Present.
Mr. Coda. Chesterfield County, Mr. Carroll.
Here.
Mr. Holland.
Here.
Mr. Winslow. Mr. Miller. Goochland County Chair Lumpkins.
Here.
Ms. Lascalette. Hanover County Vice Chair Peterson.
Here.
Mr. Davis. Ms. Pritchard. Henrico County, Ms. O'Bannon.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Thornton.
Here.
New Kent County, Ms. Page.
Here.
Mr. Tiller. Mr. Evelyn. Powhatan County, Mr. Williams.
Here.
Ms. Carmack. City of Richmond, Mr. Addison.
Here.
Ms. Jordan. Ms. Lynch. Dr. Newbill.
Here.
Mr. Jones. Ms. Larson. Ms. Robertson. Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Rutledge. RRTC, Ms. Adams. Ms. Torres.
Here.
RMTA, Ms. Dean. VDOT, Mr. Totten. Mr. Riblet.
Here.
CTAC, Ms. Guthrie.
Here.
Ms. Erickson.
Here.
DRPT, Mr. Brule. Ms. Dubinsky.
Here.
Federal Highway Administration, Mr. Nelson. Mr. Rucker. FTA, Mr. Koenig. Ride Finders, Ms. Tisdale.
Here.
Ms. Ruffin. And Virginia Department of Aviation, Mr. Harrington. That concludes the roll call for attendance, and we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Firestone. Ms. O'Bannon from Henrico County has requested to participate remotely. She's explained that's in the category of our list here. It's a personal matter. She's having to stay at home because she's got some long-awaited construction going on at her house and she needs to be present. So the chair will entertain a motion. My decision is to allow her to participate remotely, but the chair will entertain a motion to approve my allowing her to.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
We'll give it to Mr. Thornton, Mr. Thornton, once you're here, Mrs. O'Bannon. So thank you. And second by Dr. Newbill. Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So are there, well, I know that we have some amendments to the meeting agenda. I'll dive right in. And of course, that doesn't preclude anybody else from weighing in. What do we have? We have an item that we're going to add on the action B4. We have 3 items under new business under B, and we're going to add an item number 4. And it's a review and approval of a request from VDOT to amend the FY21, FY24 TIP to add 1 new project. We received this request from VDOT on April 25th to amend the TIP to add project, has a UBC number 122147. It's a 288 northbound hard shoulder running lane. So
Move for approval, Mr. Chair.
let me see if I want to add make one more change on it. Thank you. The agency and committee reports are under C. We're going to, if you, with the policy board's consent, move item C, the agency committee reports, to after other business. And, before adjournment, so basically switch those around.
The motion stands.
Second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Peterson and Mr. Williams. And yes, any other amendments to the agenda?
No, a discussion item regarding that.
Let's open it. There's a motion and a second discussion. The floor is yours, Mr. Parsons.
Following the executive committee meeting this morning, staff is confident that we don't, if it's the board's pleasure, we don't need to add the tip amendment to today's meeting. We can handle it on June 1st. And staff's recommendation will be to call a special 8:30 a.m. meeting before the joint annual meeting to allow for this action to take place.
Okay, I hear that. What my preference would be, since Mr. Rulu is here and the executive committee heard about it, I'd like to at least leave it on there, give you 5 minutes, so that that'll sort of have things readied up for our tight June 1 day. So at least we can hear about it, have a little bit of discussion, whatever we want to do today. But I'll try to move through it quickly, knowing though that it sounds like staff has just, and working with you. Yes. Are we looking at getting us set up for June 1st? But I still would like an opportunity to hear it, because since we've introduced it and not everybody's heard about it, let's talk about it, if that's okay. All right, so any other discussion about the two changes to the agenda? All in favor of adopting the new agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions, thank you, it's unanimous. All right, we have an agenda as modified slightly, and so, chair report, all right, what I started last year when I started, it worked out great. Thank you all for being so gracious about letting me add this to the beginning of the meetings where we did county highlights. And I remember, like yesterday, we heard from Mr. Adkins in Charles City, and that you got us off to a great start with that little addition to the agenda. And almost, if we had time, I'd love to hear about how those things that you talked about, that so many of us didn't even know were going on in Charles City, how they're progressing. But maybe the next chair will pick it up. But I saved the best for last. Today we have Goochland County presenting. We've gone through all the counties, and thank you again. Mr. Vic Carpenter, our county administrator, joins us today. We have a little video slide and a couple of words from Mr. Carpenter, and then we'll move into the meeting. But again, thank you all. I've really enjoyed it, and hope you enjoy a little presentation on Goochland County.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board and commission. My name is Victor Carpenter. I'm the county administrator for Goochland County. And I'm going to spend a few minutes to you this morning just telling you about Goochland County. Now, you're already, I'm sure, have heard of Goochland County, you're familiar with it, but I'm going to give you a little deeper dive into what we are, where we are, and I'm going to start with where we are. Goochland County is about 20 minutes to downtown Richmond, about 30 minutes to Charlottesville. I-64 forms roughly the northern boundary of the county, about 30 to 40 miles, and the James River forms the southern boundary of the county, about 42 miles. We're close to the Port of Richmond, we're close to I-95 and Highway 288. I'm also told that geographically, that's the exact location of heaven. So who are we in Goochland County? Well, again, we're a small place. 25,000 people roughly live within our 289 square miles. We're a very well-educated county. In fact, we're one of the 10 highest educated counties in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia, with over 70% of our residents having a 4-year degree or higher. The median income is strong, over $100,000 a year, and the median value of a house is over $400,000 a year. In fact, in March of this year, it was $569,000. So that raises all kinds of opportunities for counties such as ours, good and bad. Of course, taxes are important. We've got the lowest real estate tax in the entire region and one of the lowest personal property taxes in the entire region. Our schools are highly rated and consistently score in the top 10 across the state. But we're a growing county. Things are happening there. In the last 5 years, over 60% increase of building permits are coming in. Currently, as we speak, over $200 million of capital construction on the commercial side, and almost $1 billion of total construction is currently underway in Goochland County as we speak at this very second. So who's in Goochland? Well, a lot of people want to be there, and you can see that. Goochland County is Capital One has got a campus of over 10,000 employees. CarMax's headquarters are there. Luckstone's headquarters are there. Leasefield Construction, Sheltering Arms, the Federal Reserve Bank is there, SB Cox. So you see Performance Food Group. People have moved into Goochland County and they want to work there. So they not only want to live there, they want to work there. And what else can you do? Well, you can have small companies as well. We have hotels, we have veterinarian clinics, we have a variety of opportunities for our citizens to take advantage of what we offer to them. And what do we offer to them? We offer fun. If you've been to Goochland County, the 25,000 people, we have 10 craft distillery breweries in there. We have 4 wineries, we have 4 breweries, we have 1 cidery, 1 distillery, and soon to be another winery. That's an awful lot of opportunities for people to go out and see their environment, their community, have a great time. Hopefully you've had a chance to visit some of those. We also have one of the remaining outdoor drive-in movie theaters in the Commonwealth of Virginia. A neat way to spend time with your family if you ever get that chance. And if you like golf, we've got 4 golf courses, and we've also got the opportunity to go out and hit some balls at the driving range right there on the interstate. So you can do lots of fun stuff in Goochland County. You can live there, of course. As I said, we've got currently over 300 permits for houses as we speak. We've got a number of subdivisions that are under construction. You can live in any part of the county, the eastern side, close to Short Pump, or the western part of the county, where you can have large acreage and be within sight of the mountains. But the fun stuff there, encourage people to come and see what we can do. That QR code, download, and that'll tell you all the restaurants we have. That'll tell you the breweries and the opportunities to go out and visit our craft foods, our craft beverages, and enjoy it. And enjoy the place that we are, the community that we are, the sense of difference that we have there. I'm gonna go and then show you a little video as what Goochland is.
Chairman, it's good to know you're located close to heaven, if not in heaven.
But John Hodges, we're
Choking with the universe.
just west of the center of the universe.
That's right. Thank you.
I'm very supportive of that program, and we have been utilizing that program for the last few years. We've been able to hire several of those students after graduation. They're still working on the program. I just think systems to improve mental health services and everything in digital outreach, which is great. While you're right, I think it's we're here to make sure today and our kids now is up there in and we're at grandchildren. So we're extending the business into the next generation and we're bringing our family, our grandchildren, and just want to thank you. Our future is your future.
And as it pans off to heaven, I appreciate the opportunity to share with you a little bit about Goodson County today. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. All right. So that's all for the chair's report, and thank you again for everybody for participating with that, the locality highlights. We'll now move to the open public comment period. Anybody in the audience here wish to speak to the policy board? Please come forward. Is there anybody online that has indicated? All right. Seeing no one wishing to speak to us, I'll close the public comment period and move to the approval of the minutes of our April 6th, the last month meeting. The Chair will entertain a motion to
So
approve the
moved, Mr.
minutes.
Chairman.
Mr. Williams, and seconded by Dr. Newbill. Thank you both. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention, Mr. Atkins. All right. Thank you. The minutes have been approved. Now diving into the consent agenda, I will turn it over to Mr. Parsons to walk us through the 4 items on our consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are, as you said, 4 items under item 6 on the consent agenda. I do have a quick presentation for item 6B. It's in your agenda packet, so I can go into that in more detail if needed. But the consent agenda is actually to approve an information item of the work status and financial report from March of 2023. That's on page 9. The FY23 UPWP amendment. This is an action on the consent agenda to approve the reallocation of existing funds from 2 work tasks to cover additional work that has been identified for TPO focus for the remainder of FY23. So that's from today until the end of June. And that shift is on page 26 in the highlighted items. The other 2 on the consent agenda items are the action to approve the draft regional conformity assessment, and then highway maintenance groupings under item 6D is proposed amendments for 3 maintenance project groupings on the existing tip. So that's a quick overview of the consent agenda items.
All right. Any questions on any of those items?
Move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Motion to approve. Mr. Hodges seconded. Any discussion? All right, consent agenda item, we can do it by voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so the consent agenda, those 4 items have been approved. We'll dive into new business. Item 1, the FY24, FY27 TIP. Motion to approve the draft TIP. Mr. Bushing, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So this item is approval of the new TIP. So the action on the consent was to amend the current TIP. This is approval of the new TIP for federal fiscal years 24 to 27. Little bit of background, the TIP is of course the short-range transportation plan for the region. The closest analogy would be the CIP at the locality level. So it's basically the projects that have been identified for the next 4 years for receiving federal dollars and actually spending and getting reimbursement for those federal dollars. It also reflects any regionally significant projects that might be funded with local or state dollars, but would have an impact on the capacity of our overall system. And then the TIP is incorporated directly into the state level STIP. And including a project in this TIP-STIP process is one of those necessary pieces to getting federal authorization and ultimately getting reimbursement for the dollars spent on that project. So the major changes included in this TIP is we've really moved towards a web-first approach. So historically, the TIP has just been a PDF document. So what we tried this time was developing both the PDF document as well as a new website dedicated to the TIP, so that it is accessible, so everyone can view it at any time, and so that you have all the resources. And let me just switch screens so you can see. So this is the TIP website that we have. So you still have access to the PDF documents. They're available on here. But what's exciting is now you can also search projects. So if you want to see what projects are in the city of Richmond, you just type in Richmond, it'll pull up everything in Richmond. If you want to search by a project code or a project name, you can see anything that's happening. And all the projects are also mapped. So you can, just like you could in the static document, you can pull up all the details. What's happening with this project? How is it consistent with our long-range planning? What are the planned obligations that are happening? And it even allows you to comment directly on a project. So this is something we have set up. We'll continue using it moving forward as this TIP is in effect. So this will be where all the information is shared with the public. You can search via map, and it also includes all the other details like our financial plan, how we can afford all the projects that are proposed, as well as performance-based planning. So all of the performance measures that we're required to track. How are we achieving it? What are we measuring? What are we investing in that's going to help to achieve those goals? So this mirrors the format of the document, but just makes it available in another format. So as you'll recall, we came to the board back in, I believe it was March, requesting authorization for the TAC to open the public review period on both conformity and the TIP. That public review period was held between March 20th and April 19th. So it was a 30-day review period. We advertised several times in the Times Dispatch and the Free Press. We had this website set up, which everyone was linked to. The document was obviously made available for everyone to read as well. We had 809 unique visitors to the website, but we only received 3 comments. None of them were adverse comments or any substantive comment that required action. They were just requests to subscribe to future TPO updates. So TAC has reviewed the draft plan at their last meeting, and they unanimously recommended approval of the new TIP. And so the action that is requested today is for the board to adopt the FY24 to FY27 TIP as presented. So with that, I'm happy to answer any additional questions there are on this.
Thank you, Mr. Bushing. Any questions from Policy Board?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Williams?
also, if you could, provide the explanation to this body that you provided me, you know, a sidebar after I asked the question in the executive committee about how the rankings are shown, you know, on the first sheet, you know, for example, where we have the projects listed with their ranking, and then off to the side, the projects that were actually selected. But you explained that in a way that was very good, that I think needs to be shared with this body.
Sure, I believe that was on one of the future agenda items, so I can address it in that presentation. So that's going to be on the allocation.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll keep that on tap for, is that going to be the regional funding allocation? Is that what you're thinking?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, any other questions on the TIP adoption request for the TIP? All right. Was there a motion? There's been no motion on that. So if there are no questions, the chair will entertain a motion to adopt the TIP
So moved.
Mr. Peterson, thank you.
Second.
That was Dr. Newell, thank you. All right, so there's been a motion and a second to approve item B1, the FY 24-27 tip. Any discussion? Mr. Parsons?
I can't let this go by without just singing the praises of the work that staff has done in putting this together, led by Mr. Bushing. I think this is gonna be one of those milestones that the TPO is gonna see as we move down the road, that a lot of our activities will transition to a format like this with the web-based mapping and everything else and all of the information available at anybody's fingertips. I could see this going a similar direction for CBTA if the discussion moves in that direction for that board. So much like we've been recognized over the last few years for our ability to track performance data and understanding what impacts are being seen at the project level. I think we're gonna be a leader across the Commonwealth to share information like this in a more public-facing, accessible format. So if I'm sitting here, I'd like to talk about our staff. So thank you very much.
You should have nudged me or something, because I'm sorry that had to come from your boss and not from the policy board chair or the policy board members, but I can tell you, speaking on behalf of the policy board, I think we all are impressed where you're heading with this. And I wished I'd have jumped in front of Chet and said it myself, but certainly I was gonna comment on it, that looks very robust. We talked about it in the pre-meeting, so thank you for doing that. It makes it, I mean, that's what we're trying to do, is be more transparent, make it more accessible for more and more people. And you've really opened it up, I think, in a big way, accessibility for all of us and for the community. So I'll just echo what your boss said about what a good job this has been.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I do appreciate it, and the policy board does as well. So if there's no other discussion we have a motion and a second to approve it, I will go through, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Atkins?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
Mr. Holland?
Aye on his behalf. Aye for all of Chesterfield, they're all gone, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. Chair Lumpkins?
Aye.
Mr. Vice Chair Peterson?
Aye.
Ms. O'Bannon?
Aye.
Mr. Thornton?
Aye.
Ms. Page?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Addison?
Aye.
Dr. Newbill?
Aye.
Ms. Torres? Aye. And Mr. Ridley?
Aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Bushing. The self-certification, it says, Mr. Parsons, are you going to stand in for that as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll roll into the second item on our business, the RRTPO self-certification. Floor is yours, sir.
Thanks again, Mr. Chairman. This is the third item essentially of the TIP submittal packet. So we just approved the TIP itself, approved the conformity with the consent agenda, and this is the last piece. Essentially, when an MPO adopts the new TIP, we're required to self-certify that we are complying with all of the planning and non-discrimination authorities that are relevant to metropolitan planning activities. The other piece of that is large MPOs like ours are also subject to a federal review every 4 years. So our last federal review was in 2021. As you'll all recall, it was a very good review for us. We had no corrective actions. We had several recommendations on how to enhance the program, and then we had 8 commendations for things that we're doing really well. And many of those recommendations we've been working on since then. So staff also put together an assessment, which is in your agenda packet, which is essentially walking through all of those various aspects of metropolitan planning, air quality conformity, the non-discrimination authorities, to demonstrate how we are complying with those requirements. So that's in your packet as well, and is intended to inform the decision today. And this follows a model that's been used in Hampton Roads and some other MPOs throughout the state. So TAC reviewed this request at their last meeting, and unanimously recommended approval. So the action that we're requesting today is pretty lengthy, but it's essentially resolving that we are complying with all of these regulations, including MPO planning, the Clean Air Act, Title VI requirements, and then there's a lot of different non-discrimination authorities, so employment and procurement, disadvantaged business enterprises, equal employment opportunity, ADA, age discrimination, gender discrimination, disability discrimination, essentially stating that the MPO is following all of those requirements as mandated in federal law and regulations. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, I would refer you to the questionnaire and the federal certification as the justification for this.
All right, I'm looking at what's on the screen to see how we'll craft. Is that how this? Yeah, what's it? I'm jumping ahead to, yeah, it's right in the agenda if somebody wants to, well, any questions of Mr. Bushing on that? Jumping ahead, so having done, the chair will entertain a motion to approve. Look at the agenda here, I'm flipping through different pages. I'm beginning there. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the self-certification resolution, and we can do this by a voice vote.
So moved.
Mr. Carroll, and seconded by Dr. Newbill, thank you. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I would just adopt the text language in my motion to include what's actually projected on the screen.
There, that screen has changed now, so yeah, resolved that the TPO certify that in accordance with 23 code CFR Part 450, Section 336, self-certification and federal certifications, the Metropolitan Transportation Planning process is being carried out in accordance with all applicable requirements, and then it goes from there, including some US code sections and PO planning, and is there a continuation page? Is there? Yep, there, okay, that's why I lost the thread there. So there's 2, 3, and 4. So that's the, and 5, 8.
So I would say the
40.
simplest way to do this is just to adopt all the language that's part of the
Yeah, exactly.
agenda today on page 40.
40, page 40 of the agenda, thank you.
Sir? As presented, yes.
All right, that is the motion, and that's what you seconded, Dr. Newbill?
Yes.
Yep. All right, any discussion? All right, we'll just do voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. So let's go on to the next item. And, yep, and Mr. Wishing, you're staying put. So we've got number 3, the regional funding allocations. D3, FY 24 and 29 regional funding allocations. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. So this item is the allocations for the STVG, CMAQ, and the new carbon reduction program, which are all federal funds that are essentially sub-allocated to the MPO region, and we're responsible for project selection with those funds. So in terms of the process, the applications were submitted in the fall of 2022. VDOT helped us to review the project estimates through the winter, and TAC worked on reviewing the existing project requests. TAC made recommendations in February for those existing project requests, and then we received the draft budget with the final numbers in March. So this is the outcome from this whole process that's taken about 9 months. So in total, here's the budget summary. You can see it's from 24, we have about 33.9 million all the way up in fiscal year 29, 37.4 million to allocate across the different programs. We had about $10 million in previous funding, which needed to go on to existing projects, so we could help to advance those. So the project selection process, all of the new applications were scored based on the approved regional funding framework, which basically mirrors the scoring and ranking process that we used for the long-range transportation plan, ensuring consistency between our long-range and short-range planning. All of the projects were ranked in order, which is the spreadsheet that's in the packet. And then they were funded in rank order based on program eligibility. So there was a question in the executive committee as why several projects were skipped. And it's essentially that we ran out of funding in the RSTP program, so we couldn't continue funding those projects. But in the CMAQ program, we had a little extra money that we could move down the list to the next CMAQ eligible project. So in terms of the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, that STVG program, which I believe is listed as RSTP incorrectly on the spreadsheet that was referenced earlier, so I do apologize for that. There were 5 existing projects that were recommended for additional funding. So these were all projects that were ready to move into construction. There was some sort of deficit or shortfall, and this is helping to offset that funding deficit so that the projects could move forward with construction. So it's Route 1 improvements in the town of Ashland, Route 360 widening in Hanover County, Commerce Road and Jenk Road in the city of Richmond, and the RRTPO's scenario planning process. So this one isn't going into construction, but this is part of our ongoing scenario planning process building up to the next long-range transportation plan. In addition, there were 5 new projects that were recommended for funding. 2 planning studies. If you'll recall, the funding framework does prioritize planning studies for year 1 money, so we can develop those projects to get them into the pipeline. 2 leveraging awards, which is just PE only funding for them to go out and seek additional funding through other funding programs, and then 1 transit project. So the 5 projects for the RSTP program that were recommended: the Route 106 corridor study. This is in Charles City County. This is the busiest road in the county. There's a major rezoning for business and industrial underway right now. There's a recent fatality at a railroad crossing, so it's a safety concern for the county as well. So this would help the county to establish a project pipeline, identify all the needs along that corridor, that they could come back and actually seek project funding from CVTA or the TPO. The Route 288 corridor study in Chesterfield County. This one is a study that is refining a previous interchange study done in the area. So it's essentially taking some of the projects that haven't been built yet or haven't been funded yet and getting them ready to go into the competitive application process. So this is additional study, and it should also be noted that all 3 of those projects are in our long-range plan. So this is advancing our long-term vision for major projects for the region as well. The next one is the first of our leveraging only projects. So this is Busy Street Extended. This is a smart scale project from this previous round that was unsuccessful. What this would do would provide the PE share of the project to allow them to have some money to buy down the cost in those competitive funding programs. The funding is matched up with smart scale round 6. So this project has a little time to find other sources as well, and then go back into the competitive pot for smart scale round 6.
When does Smart Scale Round 6 open up?
Next spring. Okay, next spring.
Next spring,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you, sir.
So the next one is I-95 Route 54 DDI. So this is a Hanover County, town of Ashland project. So this is again just leveraging, so it's the PE only funding. It's a concept that was actually studied originally by a TPO funded study and recommended. VDOT is also working on additional studies of this interchange now. And the funding is currently lined up to match with the next round of CVTA. So again, trying to buy down the cost for other competitive programs. And then finally, the only full project that we're funding for construction in the RSTP program is the Essential Transit Infrastructure for GRTC. So GRTC has adopted a plan to improve stops throughout their entire system, and they're prioritized based on ridership and equity considerations. So this covers 30 different stops within the city of Richmond, and improvements are vary depending on the stop, but it's basically everything from a landing pad for people to be able to get on and off, shelters, trash cans, benches, lean rails, anything that would be needed to bring those stops up to the standard that GRTC has adopted. So those are the 5 projects from the RSTP program. I'm happy to stop there if there are any questions. Otherwise, I can continue on through the other half of the program as
I
well.
think it's good to pause. Does anybody have any questions?
Just a comment, this is a major, event for Charles City, and it will have impacts far beyond anything that I probably can describe for the economic future as well as transit. And I appreciate all your hard work on this.
Thank you. You can just go back to that one. That was a few slides. That was the first one I think you showed.
Yes, sir.
Yep, there's the, so we're getting started on the corridor study. Yep. First of 3 corridors that you're looking at in your county is that right? Route 5 and Route 155 is,
106.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, and then it looks like there's others coming.
Definitely.
Yeah, good stuff. On the GRTC, are those stops that you're looking at, there, I was trying to look, that map shows us the 30 stops, does that map show us the 30 stops?
Yeah, there are those little numbers right there, the 30 stops.
They're not, I mean, they're not along the pulse, are they?
No, there are local stops that need just infrastructure improvements.
Gotcha. All right, any other questions? Mr. Hodges?
Just a comment on the Hanover Ashland Virgin Diamond and the listing of projects. It's listed as a Hanover project, and we're all proud Hanoverians, but we would like recognition of our $200,000 contribution.
Yes, sir, I apologize. It was a Hanover County application for this round.
I see. Thank you.
We're taking care of our town.
And we appreciate it.
That's right. All right, any other questions on those items?
Just for clarification, Mr. Chairman, we discussed in the executive committee the difference between RSTP and RS or block grants.
You're still saying RSTP.
So what is the difference? We established that it's the same thing, it's just a progression and what we call the same money.
That's correct. It's a long process of making sure that we change our reference to RSTP to STBG.
Right.
It's an old term versus a new term.
So the recommendation is we don't keep showing both.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And we'll correct Miles when he. Okay. Do you want to roll? You want to go to the next?
Sure, I can move on to the second half of the program. So the other two funding programs are the congestion mitigation and air quality and the carbon reduction program. They have very similar eligibilities. So we've sort of treated them as one for this round until we have additional time to look into the carbon reduction program. Basically with this funding, we were able to, with the new funding program, we were able to advance all of our previously selected projects and pull them from starting way out in out years to be able to have funding starting this upcoming fiscal year. We had 3 existing projects which had deficits or had local funding that was covering the deficit that we were able to replace. 2 of those were sections of the Fall Line Trail that we were able to help replace any local contributions and use the federal dollars instead. And then one was just a project that had a deficit that hadn't been requested yet. And then there were 2 new projects recommended as well. So the existing projects, Route 1, Marina to Marywood, and that's the Fall Line Trail segment. So this would replace local funding that's on the project that's not needed as a match for any other funding source. The second is Brook Road and Hilliard Road in Henrico County. And again, this is replacing the locality contribution to the project with CMAQ or carbon reduction funding. So that's the goal, was to fully fund those Fall Line Trail projects. And then Patterson Avenue sidewalk, also in Henrico County, had a deficit that we were able to identify and help to meet as well. And then for the new projects, we have one in the city of Richmond. This is the automated traffic signal performance measures. This is part of the TPO's continued support to upgrades to the traffic control system and signal system in the city of Richmond. Basically what this does is it allows the signals to provide continuous data and evaluate performance against the set targets for the city, which allows for proactive adjustments rather than waiting for citizen complaints or waiting for updating every 4 years to redo a timing assessment. This actually provides real data that things can be adjusted much more easily and better because it has additional information rather than using modeling. So this would cover 17 different corridors. You can see the traffic signals on the map. So they're all outside of the downtown core, but this would provide improvements throughout that section of the system. And this also, we received a letter of support from the State Traffic Engineer's Office as well on this project. The last project is in Chesterfield County. This is a small sidewalk project on Route 360. And this one would extend a sidewalk that's being built under other projects that are underway or planned. And it continues the county's focus on vulnerable road users on the corridor. This area is also slated for major redevelopment. One thing we did want to highlight as part of the ongoing cost estimating considerations, VDOT's estimate was about 21% higher than the locality's estimate, which has been used for funding in this application. The TAC was aware of this, the TAC discussed this, And we felt that this would be a good test case for tracking, since both projects use the both estimates use the cost estimating workbook. We'll be able to compare over the course of the project where the differences came in, how the performance was between the locality and VDOT estimate. So this could help us further with refining that cost estimating policy down the road. So this is essentially a test case there, since it's the only one that we have where there's a difference between the two.
So using the same mechanism, the locality and the state came up with there was a 21% delta between the two cost estimates using the same tools?
Correct. So they're reporting it the same way, so it's standardized, so it's easier for us to compare, apples to apples comparisons, because we're looking at the exact same thing. But we'll be able to track it over time and see how the performance was, and see in which areas, did VDOT perform better, did the locality estimate perform better? So it's really a way for us to track the project and test these new approach that's further in your agenda.
Yeah, I'd say, because I knew that was on the agenda, so anyway, that raises more questions, but anyway, go ahead. Unless there's any questions, okay.
So we conducted a 15-day public review as required by our engagement plan. The materials have been posted on the website. We received no comments on any of the proposed new projects. So the TAC recommendation was to unanimously recommend the draft allocations and transfers, including these new project selections. So the action requested is essentially three parts here. So it's resolved that the approval of the allocation of funds as shown in the attached allocation plan, so that's fiscal years 24 through 29, and there's separate plans in there for each of the funding programs. And then further resolve that the board approves any of the proposed transfers of previous funding that were required as part of this plan as well. So we want to make sure we're using up all the previous money, so it's not just sitting there and expiring on us. So that is also directing staff to take any coordination steps necessary with VDOT to ensure those transfers are completed. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Bushing. Good job. It packed a lot in there. Board, any questions, comments? All right. Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Hodges and Mr. Thornton. All right, any discussion? Any questions? Where is the sidewalk on Patterson Avenue, if you happen to know that Patterson Avenue and Henrico one?
I don't know off the top of my head. That was an existing project that we identified the deficit on.
That was one of the existing ones. Okay. If there are no more discussion, a roll call vote, please. Remember, Mr. Carroll's the only one from Chesterfield. So.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Atkins?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
Chair Lumpkins?
Yes.
Vice Chair Peterson?
Aye.
Ms. O'Bannon?
Aye.
Mr. Thornton?
Aye.
Ms. Page?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Addison? Dr. Newbill?
Aye.
Ms. Torres?
Aye.
Ms. Dean?
Aye.
And Mr. Ridley?
Aye.
That motion carries.
That passes. Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Okay, not on the agenda, but we adopted at the beginning was item B4. And Mr. Riblet, if you will present the request, the tip amendment, adding additional project to the tip to the policy board. But as we discussed in the very beginning, I think staff will have a recommendation how we handle it. So if you'll just cover the ask. Sure. And then I'll turn it over to Mr. Parsons to hear from him on the recommendation, and then we'll go from there. Thank you.
Absolutely. So the request is to add PE phase, preliminary engineering phase on the 288 hard shoulder running project that extends from Powhatan County into Goochland County. It's in using a number of different transportation funding sources. We have CBTA funding on it. We also have Innovative and Technology Transportation Fund, ITTF fund, money on the project. And that makes it uniquely positioned at this point, since that funding is actually previous funding, that with a TIP amendment, we can actually begin to start that project and the PE phase on that project moving forward pretty quickly. There are two options for doing the TIP amendment TAP did recommend approval for the TIP amendment, and it can be certainly considered today. That would be we would be happy for that action if it happened today, but it also doesn't cause us any concern if that action is taken on June 1st at the next committee meeting with the policy board. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Policy Board. Any questions of Mr. Riblet and the TIP amendment? Does everybody have this, sheet available to them?
It was with the
Yeah,
agenda.
yeah, so on the agenda on the outside, you see more detail on that. Mr. Parsons?
Staff's recommendation after the discussion at the executive committee meeting this morning is to, even though June 1st is not a traditional meeting of the policy board, staff's recommendation is to call a special meeting at 8:30 before the joint meeting begins for the sole purpose of taking up this action item. That will allow the public comment period to fully see its way out, and we will be able to process any comments received during that time and bring those when the action item is actually presented for consideration.
All right, thank you both. Any questions of either presenter on this topic?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would like Mark, if he would, explain why this is coming to us late. You know, you have in the packet that, would set aside the limits. And really what it was, we had the information there for the northern proposed, but we didn't have it for the southern ramp.
So there's two different projects, one for northbound 288, one for southbound 288. The northbound project is the one that is receiving funding and is advancing at this point. There were some slight adjustments in the termini so that the northbound project is actually referenced correctly with the termini. Part of the reason it's coming in a little bit of a quick format at this point is because we have previous funding on the project, which is not typical for a new project being added at a fully funded status at this point in time. So it's just simply looking at options and opportunities to help advance a project moving forward.
And this is a pretty significant project, I believe, for the region because it represents something that we haven't done before.
Correct.
As a state. I mean, this is state-of-the-art technology, is it not?
That is correct. We're doing something, proposing something with this project that the region hasn't seen before. We're certainly happy as we continue on over the next number of months to bring additional information back. We can present it to whomever may be interested. If there's a desire for that, we'd be happy to give kind of a 101 on what this project really is going to look like and what we anticipate it doing.
Because as you said, we're not just going out and building something. We're using what we have and we're using technology to improve what we have, which is important today with the scarce dollars that we have.
That's correct. This project will, during peak hours of traffic, take 3 lanes of traffic across the 288 bridge northbound where we only have 2 lanes today.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and support a motion, to go forward with this, as staff has recommended, for the June meeting. I would just like to urge everybody, make sure we have a quorum, okay? Because I would hate to see, for any reason, any delay in this project. Also, I think this is an opportunity for the region and for VDOT to show off what we're proposing to do in the region with this project. And I've already talked to the incoming chairman about potentially having a presentation by VDOT on this particular project brought before this body. So those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. And so I think there is some technology, there's a technology funding component in this.
That's correct.
Right? And what's the number on that attached to that?
So it's 8 million
8 million,
on
yeah.
that, correct?
Yep.
Mr. Chairman.
You missed,
Dr.
Mr.
Newell?
Mr. Carroll.
Just to speak to the project, last year, this project was added to the regional transportation package that the CVTA passed, and quite frankly, at the last minute. And the reason it is because the $8 million that was available through the state for technology, this project was identified as being perfect for it. And so the CVTA collectively moved that onto the regional transportation project. And what my colleagues have said here today is absolutely true. Number one, it's a very needed project because in the morning, everybody is trying to get northbound on 288 to come over to the wonderful county of Goochland and the wonderful county of Henrico, and they're leaving Chesterfield to go work there and Powhatan, are getting stacked up in traffic. And so this will, an opportunity not only for technology to be used in the sense that they'll be able to turn the lane on and off if they need be to get emergency vehicles in and out. It will also add more connection between the north and south lane in the middle for emergency vehicles to have access both north and south. And this is a project that mirrors the southbound project as well. And so I do agree with my colleague. I think it's a very good project. We're very fortunate that the state decided to give us the $8 million instead of putting in Northern Virginia or Hampton roads. And I do think it's something we need to move forward. So I agree with my colleague's comment.
Dr. Newby?
Yes, I concur in terms of the nature of the project. My concern is one that was, I think, articulated by Mr. Williams, whether or not we would have quorum on the first. And if there's a concern about that, should we proceed with motioning to approve on condition of, we said March 30th would be the completion of
May 30th.
I'm sorry, wrong month, wrong year. Yeah, we want it sooner, May 30th. Should we take some action to ensure that there is not any delay? That's the question, and I don't know, if we have some sense, quorum is not going to be an issue, fine. But the importance of the project, from my perspective, we want to make sure that it didn't get stalled because.
Let me spring off of that and ask Mr. Riblet a question. How do, if we were to take action today to quote conditionally approve it, what assurances can you provide us that if there is a negative or any public comment that implicates this, how can you put the brakes on? How do you propose to make sure that things stop and that the policy board has a timely opportunity to address?
So the process that VDOT and FHWA work through after the MPO takes action, it takes many weeks to get through, not only to get the TIP approved, the STIP approved, PE authorization, and then the project open to charges. At any one of those stages, we can pump the brakes and say MPO staff or any of the MPO representatives have received negative feedback, and we can stop the process at that point without any harm to the funding.
Mr. Chair, just to add to that comment, keep in mind that this project was already vetted through the CVTA, that there was an opportunity for public comment on that prior to the voting for the regional transportation package, which voted unanimously for $276 million regional transportation package. And it's been sitting out there as a project approved by the CVTA, went through the first round of smart scale, and the public has had an opportunity for a long time, quite frankly, to comment on this project. And my question to staff would be, in this entire time period over the last year, have we received any negative comments from the public about this project?
No. Mr. Parsons says no.
The only question I have for legal counsel is it an issue for us to approve this without having an additional prior opportunity for public comment, considering that this has already had an opportunity for public comment for a long period of time?
It's abnormal, but I can't say it's not a violation of any provision of law that I'm aware of. So it is possible to do it that way, and I believe staff has prepared a motion to conditionally approve the item if that's the will of the body.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Peterson up next.
Mr. Chairman, I think everybody on this policy board is a responsible person, and I don't think knowing that the importance of this, I don't think we're going to have any problem of having a quorum at the early meeting, and I really do have a problem with approving something before the public comment period has been closed.
Mr. Williams?
I want to thank Mr. Carroll for his comments because I raised that issue in the executive session about where did the money come from? And of course, the money came from CVTA, and there was a vetting process and a public process associated with that. So I agree with Mr. Peterson. I never want to get in front of public comment, but in this case, as Mr. Carroll pointed out, this has been out there in the public arena for comment through the CBTA putting monies on this project. And all we're asking for is to conditionally go forward today. And as Mark has said, he can pump the brakes. If we get negative feedback, we can pump the brakes. And at that point, we will be in accord with the public process of getting feedback and responding. Now, if we don't get any negative feedback, this allows us to go forward and not have to worry about or anticipate any potential delays as we go forward. I can't see any reason why we wouldn't go forward, echoing the concerns of Dr. Newbill, that this is an important project. And I'm not saying just because it's important that we circumvent public input. What I am saying is we have had public input. And in the event that this go around, we have any negative comments, we have the ability, as Mr. Riblet has said, to pump the brakes and go back and incorporate, digest any public comment that may be of a reverse nature and take that into consideration. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Dr. Newbill.
Yes, so I would never want to circumvent public comment. There's been significant many opportunities thus far. However, we still have not concluded as we normally would with the project. So I'd like to make a motion to approve contingent upon, and I'm not sure if you framed that.
Yeah, it's on.
Thank you. Contingent upon the comments received, and if there is negative comment, that we do press pause and address those. If not, we proceed.
We will absolutely commit to doing that and checking in with TPO staff at the end of the public comment period, just to make sure where we are. We will take an active role in doing that.
And maybe at the June 1st, we can get any update.
Yep.
Relative to public comment, if there's been anything negative such that the action would be required to have to go back and do some. That was pretty muddy, wasn't it?
That's your motion. So, and I know, Mr. Peterson, I heard you earlier. I said you support. I don't think I accepted that as a motion. So I think there's only one motion.
I did not make a motion.
Yeah, I heard you said you were expressing support. I don't think I treated that as a motion. So there was no motion on the floor. Your motion is on the floor. And I think what we have here, it's to conditionally approve the request as presented, subject to completing the 15-day public review and receiving no adverse comments. Is that?
That is
nature?
correct.
Okay. All right, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second. Mr. Thornton, counsel.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chairman. The motion as presented is as stated in the document before the board. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. All right, so we have a motion and a second to proceed with the conditional approval of this request. Mr. Peterson.
Just clarification of what conditional approval means. If it means if there is a single negative comment, is it paused?
The motion is completing the 15-day public review and receiving no adverse comments from members of the public.
Okay,
If you would like to
I just want clarification of the wording.
I think that's the way I interpret it, but if you want to suggest that.
That sounds good to me, as long as Dr. Newbill's happy with it.
Yes,
I think
that would be.
All right, any other discussion? All right, let's, no further discussions, do roll call vote on that one. And everybody understands the motion is to conditionally approve, subject to the conclusion of the 15-day period and receiving no adverse. And the definition of adverse, we'll leave that up to staff to define if it's an adverse public comment. Yep. All right, a roll call vote, Ms. Firestone.
Mr. Hodges.
Aye.
Mr. Atkins.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Chair Lumpkins.
Aye.
Vice Chair Peterson.
Aye.
Ms. O'Bannon.
Aye.
Mr. Thornton.
Aye.
Ms. Page. Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Dr. Newbill.
Aye.
Ms. Torres.
Aye.
Ms. Dean.
Aye.
And Mr. Riblet.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, so there's no need for us to pick this back up on June 1st. Is that correct?
Could we
Unless-
just get an update?
Yes.
We'll get an update, but we do not need to have an 8:30 meeting, or?
Oh,
We will, it depends on
We'll
the
see,
public
we'll
comment
see,
period.
we'll see.
Yes.
Public comment period ends on the 30th though, I think, so it could be close. All right. So I think we'll, now, Mr. Williams, I, in the zeal to get through things, did I miss where we were gonna come back and talk about the chart with the yellow and all? Did I miss diving into that?
Miles covered it. Miles covered it in his
Okay.
continued question.
I realized I wanted to come back to
No,
that.
No, he covered it.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, next on the agenda is, we're moving to other business. Remember, we put section C to the end, so we're D1. All right, this is, again, I think we're doing pretty well on time. Is everybody good to keep going, or do we need a break?
Yeah, we have an 11 o'clock TP or letter.
Oh, it starts at 11, okay. So, no breaks, absolutely, no breaks.
Back to where?
TAC, project cost estimates, reports and recommendations. I think Mr. Bushing's coming up on that one. Keep rolling, you're doing great, Mr. Bushing, but this is one we've been working on for months. Looking forward to the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as you'll all recall, that the board had delegated a review of the cost estimate process to the TAC to come back with a recommendation. And at that time, the board had forwarded 4 potential options for consideration and asked the TAC to consider those, plus anything else that they discovered as they were working through the process. As part of that, we went through every single project that was in that list of projects that had gone over their initial cost estimate. And the TAC members provided an explanation of what was the driver. And what we found out was there wasn't a single driver. It wasn't one thing that we could pinpoint to fix across the board. But there were a handful of things that we noticed. For example, inflation was not consistently applied across projects. At some point, projects were just funded at the current cost estimate as opposed to what the future year would be. We found some issues with right-of-way and utility work, which we had mentioned to the board previously. So after looking at all the options, what the TAC is recommending at this time is to standardize the reporting of cost estimating across our entire program using VDOT's cost estimate workbook. So in that workbook, and I will just share the screen so you all can see what. So that workbook essentially standardizes for each phase of the project a way of providing the estimate. You have a defined cost, things that you know. You have allowances for things that you know you'll need a cost for, but you don't know what it is yet. There's contingencies applied. And so it's a standard way to report your project cost. The other very useful thing that this tool provides is a standard inflation factor. So every single project, if you know your estimate was this year in 2023, and you know it's not going to start until 2025, it'll tell you how much the inflation needs to be applied. And that's the same factor that VDOT's using for Smart Scale, that's using for other programs. So it's standardizing across the state. So it's aligning with the best practices that the state's figured out as well. What this still allows, as we discussed earlier, is that the locality may have different assumptions from VDOT when developing the cost estimate. But since they're in a standard report, in a standard format, we'll be able to compare and track across time. So, for example, if we see that under right-of-way, the utility cost from the locality was significantly different from the utility cost from VDOT, as the project develops, we can say, well, look, it looks like VDOT was actually right, which eventually will help us to say, which way should we go? Do we need to change the policy again? So this will allow us to do additional review down the road because we're getting the data in one consistent format. The enforcement or the teeth behind this that TAC is recommending is that if a sponsor chooses to submit an estimate and does not use this cost estimate workbook, they're not eligible for any additional funding from the TPO. So whatever the dollar amount you got, that's all you're getting. What's that?
For that
project, exactly. Not across the whole program. But the intent is that there is an incentive for localities to use the standardized reporting methodology as you're putting in the applications. So that's the action before you. So in your packet, there's a motion, and hopefully it's the revised ones in there. But it's basically a couple whereas clauses talking about the process that we've gone through, tax review and the recommendation. And then it's basically a resolve that this is the policy to encourage the use of this cost estimating workbook. and then directing staff to revise the regional funding framework document so that any applications for the next round of funding and on that doesn't use this will lose that eligibility for additional funding. So then staff would revise the document and we can bring it back to the board. So with that, I'm happy to answer any additional questions, and I believe there's some TAC members here as well if they need to jump in.
Very good, that was a good, I'm sorry we had to do it so concisely, but maybe that'll end up being fine. It's on page 60, policy board members, page 60, I think, is where the TAC recommendation at the top of that page, and then the action requested, is that right? So, any questions? This is a big item, but I think I appreciate staff and TAC drilling down. This maybe comes to us, and I think a good result in my opinion, but I'd like to hear from policy board members. Anybody wish to ask questions or speak to this?
Thank you. Thank you to staff and to the technical advisory committee and the.
All right. So there's several whereases on that page. If Chair will entertain a motion to adopt the recommendation that Mr. Bushing shared with us.
So moved.
Mr. Williams, thank you. Dr. Newbill seconds it, and that, Mr. Williams, is as presented on page 60. All right. The motion is on, okay. All right, any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hodges.
Aye.
Mr. Atkins.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Chair Lumpkins.
Aye.
Vice Chair Peterson.
Aye.
Ms. O'Bannon.
Aye.
Mr. Thornton.
Aye.
Ms. Page. Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Dr. Newbill.
Aye.
Ms. Torres.
Aye.
Ms. Dean.
Aye.
Mr. Riblett.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Wishing. Good work. All right.
Chair,
Dr. Newbill?
might I ask that we go to items 3 and 4, those that require action, just in case we're getting close to 11 for some of us. The number 2 doesn't require action, it's a discussion.
Right. Number 2 is important, and we'll try to squeeze it in, but I'm glad to do that, Dr. Newbill. So election of 2024 officers. Chair will entertain a motion to elect the TPO's chairman for next year and vice chairman. Effective, I think the vote today would be effective July 1.
Do you want a motion for chair and vice chair at the same time?
If we can,
I make the motion that.
let me consult, that's a question for council.
Yes, sir. Page 62 of the agenda packet lists the requested action according to our rotation guidelines. So if Mr. Williams was referring to that, I think that would be appropriate.
Have you talked to somebody at Chesterfield? Because when I talked to them earlier today, they had to huddle.
No, they should be talking to me if they don't want the job, that was their chance.
It was brought to my attention earlier today, and Mr. Winslow would be honored to serve in that capacity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll.
I will make the nomination for our chairman for next year, beginning July 1, be Hanover. Representing Hanover would be Mr. Canova Peterson. For vice chair would be Chesterfield, again, according to our bylaws. And that individual representing Chesterfield will be Mr. Kevin Winslow.
Chris Winslow.
Well, it can be Kevin.
Don't insult the boy. He's a lot better looking than me, he's younger.
We're trying to get the best. That's the goal here.
All right, is there a second for that nomination?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hodges. Are there any other nominations? All right, seeing none, we'll close the nominations, and now we have pending before us a motion to elect those 2 individuals as our next chair and vice chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we have that in place. Thank you very much. So you said for approval of the meeting schedule, that's on page 63.
63 through 65.
63 through 65 is our meeting schedule. Any questions? The chair will entertain a motion to adopt that schedule.
So moved.
Mr. Peterson?
Second.
Second, to give it to Mr. Williams. Thank you all. So any discussion about the proposed meeting schedule? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, thank you, Dr. Newbill. We knocked those out. CTAC, or roll discussion. I hate, we're gonna cover a lot here. We have some time. I'm glad to see we have some time. Thank you, Ms. Guthrie. Thank you. Nice to see you, Sarah Erickson. Thank you for joining us. And Mr. Martin, thank you all for being here. They're sitting with us at the table. CTAC, I'm gonna just turn it over to you all in the interest of time, but the introduction component is we wanted to hear from you all. We've talked about some pretty simple suggestions to, improve the relationship or the communication. So I'm just gonna turn it over to you all and hear from you all as to your suggestions and thoughts. And then we'll have a little discussion, and I think this will probably be something to turn over under Mr. Peterson's leadership, to take some of our ideas that we're gonna plant today and run with it. But I'm excited. I think there's a lot of opportunities, and I appreciate all of you, what you all are doing. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As he said, I'm Lisa Guthrie. I represent New Kent County on the CTAC. And this year I serve as chair, and it's already been mentioned, we have some others here from CTAC. Upton Martin was our previous chair, and Sarah Erickson is our incoming chair for the city of Richmond, Upton representing Ashland and Sarah representing the city. We also have a couple other people here with us today, John Easter with Chamber RVA, who's on the CTAC, and Michael Testerman with Virginians for High-Speed Rail. So give you a shout out back there. So thank you for the opportunity to come today and offer some
And Ms. Guthrie,
suggestions.
I think some of our members CTAC have joined virtually too, I'm
Great,
told.
okay.
Yep.
Any of them want to introduce themselves?
Mr. Basham, I think. He's muted. There we go.
Hi, I'm Bob Basham. I'm on CTAC from Goochland.
And I see a couple of others, or Tony Williams is on here representing Senior Connections.
Okay, great. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you all for joining us.
Well, thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. Just want to give you a little bit of a recap so you'll understand why we're here offering comments. As you know, the TPO's bylaws were changed a few years back to eliminate the Elderly and Disabled Advisory Committee, with the expectation that those members would be incorporated into CTAC. And it's taken us a little while to try to broaden our reach and have more participation from the localities, as well as add some additional organizations that are reflective of our regional communities and diverse populations. So anyway, when Upton was chair, we made it a priority to try to make sure that all the seats were filled for the localities. We reached out with the help of Ken Lance and other staff. We reached out to the communities, and at this point, we did add some, but we still have vacancies in Charles City County. We have no representative and no alternate. And now Henrico County has no representation because that representative had to step down. So we continue to try to fill our slots. We already had representatives from the Chamber RVA, League of Women Voters, NAACP, Richmond Area Bicycling Association, Virginians for High-Speed Rail, and VCU. So this year, we added representatives for the Richmond Office of Equitable Transit and Mobility, RVA Rapid Transit, Senior Connections, and Virginia Conservation Network. And our challenge in trying to bring in this broader diverse population is that we're asking busy people to take their time to get down in the weeds of planning for transportation in the region. And we know that people care about it. Citizens care about mobility in the region, and they're willing to roll up their sleeves and take a more active role because they care about their communities, but they want their time and their energy to make a difference, to matter. So anyway, we've had, in the past year, CTAC has had some great speakers. Ken Lance has really done a lot of work in getting great speakers to come and speak to us. We meet every other month. We've had representatives from different agencies, DRPT. We've had the ports. We've had a lot of great speakers, but it kind of ends there. And that's what people have expressed concern about, is that how can we have a more meaningful role? They want to make more of a difference. So right now, there is coordination between the TPO Policy Board and CTAC in that you invite the chair to your meetings. And so we depending on schedules, we try to make ourselves available for that. but we envision more of a partnership. We would like to see more of a collaboration. And this could be ideas such as joint public town halls or telephone town halls, in-person town halls in the localities, more involvement in the unified and long-range work plans, maybe some joint workshops between the CTAC and the policy board. And so anyway, I've asked Upton to share some of his ideas that we've discussed, and hopefully some of you will raise some questions and we can have some more dialogue on the possibilities. So Upton.
Thank you, Lisa. As Lisa said, we've worked real hard to broaden the communities represented by CTAC. There are organizations at our table whose clients are bicyclists, seniors, supporters of high-speed rail, who need equitable transportation and mobility, and the disabled. Transportation in its many forms ought to continue to address the needs of all of our citizens, and that, I think, is why the Community Transportation Advisory Committee should and could have a louder voice in the transportation decisions made. We, CTAC, have a lot of homework to do on our own. We need to be more involved and knowledgeable of the needs of our constituents, from the communities we live in to the clients we serve. We need to visit with our planning staff who populate TAC so that we know what they are thinking about and as to the local transportation. Now, what happens to all of this knowledge? There needs to be some mechanism to share it. Our CTAC meetings are informative, includes a lot of discussion, but I'm not sure how much of that discussion makes the way to recommendations that TAC make to this committee. Most of our ideas involve what I call current events, and it may be that what with the areas of increased involvement suggested along range, we at CTAC may be missing the mark. I would suggest two ways that might help to improve communication. One, like Lisa said, maybe having annual workshops. This would involve maybe replacing a meeting, and I don't know how that would happen. This would give each organization the opportunity to share goals and objectives that each could consider in making decisions. The second suggestion is have a standing place at the CTAC table to house a representative from TPO. TPO has a place for our CTAC representative, but there's no standing membership on CTAC. Chet and or Ken do a good job informing us as to what has happened at your meetings. But I submit that it would be nice for us to know what is going to happen so that we can discuss it and make suggestions as needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Ms. Erickson, did you have anything you wanted to add or?
No, I would just like to echo their sentiments as the incoming chair. I've been on the CTAC for a few years, and I think what I've seen also is that, yeah, there is a little bit of a lack of a connection. So perhaps also representatives from localities knowing each other and being open to dialogue with each other. For instance, the New Kent County representative from this board talking to the New Kent County representative from the CTAC. I don't know how well people know each other or communicate, but
right.
Yeah.
Mr. Easter or Mr. Tester, I think is Michael Testerman from High Speed Rail. Do you all have anything you'd like to offer?
Given the time limitations, I think we just stand on what's already been presented.
Thank you. And I know Bob Basham and Tony Williams. So I think there's a lot to work with. I appreciate both your thoughts. And I'm going to have all this time when I turn the gavel over to Mr. Peterson. Maybe I should be the first one to step up and show up to the CTAC meetings. So maybe I'll volunteer to do that if we decide to have somebody, if y'all open a seat and a non-voting TPO member just to join in your meetings. I'll have all this time after.
And they serve lunch too, so that's a plus.
We might even give you a vote. Don't figure that.
I'm sorry, yeah, I'm glad that I got to hear the presentation. I'm sorry, I'm rushing. Everybody decided to meet at the same time. But I would say both and in terms of the recommendations that Mr. Upton provided, both participation on, but also an opportunity for a joint meeting, and which I think would be really a great opportunity to hear. So I'd like us to at least explore both of those options and opportunities.
Yeah, more communication is
Yeah.
is at the base of all this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
That's
Thornton.
mine.
Mr. Chairman? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Ms. Sylvana, go ahead, Ms. Sylvana.
Henrico's representative was very, she went to most of the meetings, if not all. Amber Lancaster, she always provided us with reports of what was going on. I do know she did resign a couple of months ago, but we have been looking. Amber just was great, at least for Henrico. I do want to point that out, that it's just been a month or so since we haven't had a person there, so.
Thank you, Mr. Sylvana. Mr. Thornton.
Yeah, very briefly, Mr. Chairman, I want to kind of follow what Mr. Martin has suggested. He gave two suggestions. I would add the radio. We probably could use that in trying to reach people that we don't normally reach. I would suggest some of your radio stations, rather popular, can meet some of the groups that we probably need to know about this. And fourthly, let's use the social media a little bit more aggressively to get some of the people that we know that need to be a part of this. And Mr. Chairman, the other thing too we always have to be careful about is we know what CTAC is all about, but we got to get the people who utilize those services again. And I don't think, we have exploited that. So radios is one way to reach some of these groups. And then as some of us, we could be helpful also. I've known Ms. Guthrie for a long time, and she's always been diligent. So we can improve things, I think. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Thornton. Mr. Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would express support for Mr. Martin's two proposals and offer to share participation with Mr. Pumpkins since lunch is being served. Tag teaming.
Exactly. Sounds good. Anything else? Again, sorry for the constraint of time, but I think this was kind of the plan, was to set this up for going forward into the next year. Thank you all for coming out and presenting. I think definitely we have some action items coming.
Our next meeting is June the 8th, I believe, in case you are free on that day.
We gave up our scheduled meeting so that you could have your Plan RVA meeting this afternoon.
All right. And y'all meet
Every other month.
and here?
Yes.
Yep. All right, and no more, y'all stuck to virtual for a while, but have you?
Just like you, we opened it back up again. We do allow virtual participation if the person is unable to attend, but we meet in person.
All right, thank you. If there are any other.
Mr. Chair, I just want to quickly say, Ms. Guthrie, you two have set myself and Ms. Erickson up for a lot of work, I believe, but we're gonna make it happen.
Thank you all. Do we have time to keep rolling, or I'll look to my Mr. Parsons to say what things do we want to try to cover? I mean, if we're right at the time that the next group's supposed to meet, so is there any, can we defer the rest of the items? I'll open it up for comments, but.
Mr. Chair, I would ask if we can quickly address item D5 with Mr. Gregory.
Yeah, all right, if that's, Mr. Gregory, the floor is yours. Go ahead, and we're on other business, D5, remote participation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the body, I will refer you to pages 66 and more particularly page 67 in your agenda packet, please. This is regarding compliance with your policy for remote participation in meetings. As you recall, you adopted this policy in compliance with FOIA last fall. And just wanted to bring a reminder, there are parameters and rules regarding remote participation. And there are limitations on participation in meetings for personal reasons. And there is a process for notifying the chair and gaining approval by the board to participate in meetings by remote telecommunications means. So I'd ask for you to review that policy again and just make sure you're compliant with that. If for any reason you need to participate via remote telecommunications means, please notify the chair ahead of time and provide the reason for that remote participation. And it can be a permanent or temporary disability or other medical condition, that's pretty broad, or medical condition of a family member that prevents your participation in person, or that the principal residence is more than 60 miles from the meeting location. And there's no limitation on participating remotely via telecommunications means on those bases. There is a limitation if you're just going to say it's a personal matter. And a personal matter may be that you have another commitment, or that you have a conflict, or that you're on vacation, or what have you. But you can only participate via remote telecommunications means for a personal matter up to 2 times per year. And that's a calendar year, not a fiscal year. So please bear that in mind. And review that policy, please, and make sure you're in touch with the chair ahead of any meeting if you want to participate on it for any of those reasons. Any questions?
Yep, Mr. Chairman, or?
Yes, Ms. O'Bannon.
I don't qualify for this, and I know this is for the TPO, but for the Plan RVA, I have used up my personal, chances to participate virtually for the Plan RVA meeting, so I will not be attending today because of that.
Okay.
Just to let you know, that's pretty much the same rules for Plan RVA. Unfortunately, we've had a couple of things come up before, so I just wanted to mention 2 times is the limit if it's personal, so.
Yeah. Well, you can still attend. I just don't think you can participate, but.
Well,
so.
I was told I couldn't. I was told I couldn't, so.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. O'Bannon. I hope everything goes well at the house construction there. All right, future meeting topics, that's there for your review. I think we talked about that at our pre-meeting. I think that's intact.
Mr. Chair, please add one item to that. The TIP amendment we approved today should be a perfect example to have VDOT present to us our new acronym, ITTF. I think we all need to understand that program a little bit better, and this would be a perfect avenue to discuss that and add that to one of our future meetings, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can you capture that? I think we'll because we're past the time limit. We'll agency and committee reports unless there's something pressing up. I'm sorry to kind of.
I've already emailed my agency update to Janice for this.
Thank you. And GRTC, have anything? Nothing pressing? Things going okay?
Yes.
Good. And Mr. Riblet, anything besides what we've done?
We'll make sure that staff has ours as well.
All right. Mr. Parsons or Mr. Carroll for CBTA, anything?
RMTA. Joyce said she had something.
Oh.
Just quickly, we got a lot of press on this, but our RMTA board voted a couple of weeks ago to do a toll adjustment. So stay tuned for the public outreach and social media and all that. This is the first time since 2008 that we have had an adjustment. So it was greatly needed to fund our capital program and plan for the future of the expressway system.
Okay, thank you for chiming in. Sorry, CBTA, anything you want to share with us? All right, kind of jumped around, but I think let's turn this over to the next group. And any, I guess, GPO member comments? I'll open it up for member comments. Seeing none, we'll adjourn until the joint meeting. June 1st, right? June 1st here.